going on a trip. So this is my last walk in the woods before we leave for the big city. Pretty nice out here. It's kind of cold, kind of windy. That's okay. And the leaves are very dry, mostly off the trees. And right now it's about noon on a Tuesday, so nobody else is out. It's really nice. I don't do well in big cities, so we'll see how that goes. Well, good morning. Kiddo and I are watching the Spanish cooking channel here in our Hampton Inn. Say hello. No? Okay. I understand. Anyway, traffic was not too bad last night, but I'm kind of worried about today. I would really like to get out of here. My wife is currently getting some breakfast, some continental breakfast. I have a delicious ham steak. Been in town about 5 minutes, so I immediately bolted for a lunt with my Dagner Cobb and some Old Limey Bastard. It's always good to smoke a pipe in a new town, you know? Kind of expanding the territory in which Old Limey Bastard has been enjoyed. Plus, there's a lot of historical landmarks around here. Attractions and such. I'm gonna go to one of those now. And here it is, the steps where The Exorcist was filmed. Just need a place to sit down, you know? Get out of the wind, take a rest. The steps feel kind of spooky though, what do you think? Got an interval runner there going up the steps, and then this guy next to him doing pull-ups. Yeah, I don't know if I would do that here. Okay, saw what I came to see, now it's time to go home. Just kidding, I'm here for like 4 more days.
Turn left at P Street Northwest.
Walking through Georgetown, as you can see. Traffic was insane getting here. I've never been in traffic like that. Well, maybe once a long time ago, but it was pretty bad. 2 hours of traffic jams, so it's nice to be out walking. So we're here in town visiting family, and it's not a town where I feel like I really belong right now. This is where my wife and I both have family, so we're taking our first real trip in a long time, actually. We split it up over the course of a couple of days, split up the drive, but man, we should have like left at 10 at night and driven all night to get here. Anyway, I'm back. Okay, it's been like half an hour and I hate this place already. There's no fish, there's no bears, and no one looks you in the eye. This place is packed. Currently, I'm in this room all by myself with Diane Arbus and one of my favorite photos of all time. Good morning. I am so glad to be with you in the Gribley's Folly Smoky and not in Washington, D.C. It's been several days now, and I'm finally going to finish enjoying this bowl of Old Limey Bastard that I started on the National Mall. But then put out because it was like negative 40 degrees and the wind was blowing. So, Gribbs went to town. I left the woods and went to the big city, and man, did I learn a lot. Item number 1, ham steak is not a thing. Like, I don't know anything about cooking, right? So when Hampton Inn said, hey, have some ham steak, I'm like, oh yeah, sure. And then like took some up to my wife, and she's like, what the fuck is this? I was like, ham steak? What do you mean? Number 2, never, ever get on I-95 to go anywhere. Ever. God almighty, it was so crazy. So we came home, I stopped recording snippets from my vacation because I was actually spending time with family. You know how it goes. So, and I was I was overwhelmed. So, we came home a different way. We came home down Highway 29, which is a great Bruce Springsteen song, by the way. Letting my coffee cool a bit. It's kind of piping hot. Not ready for that. But yeah, 95. Like, I wrote ahead and asked people, like, Google says we should come by 95. Should we do that? And everyone was like, yeah, it'll be fine. It wasn't fine. It wasn't fine. So then I got up there and I'm like, is that what you guys think is fine? Because we spent like 2 hours just in Richmond trying to get through Richmond. And they were like, why'd you go by 95? I'm like, that's not coffee. That's really not. I'm trying different decaf blends, right? Because I need something that won't wire me up even more, and that's not coffee. Anyway, so then like there's like the stress of like traveling with your close family, who you love very much and would never nitpick at all. You would never try to get on their nerves just because they made you late and got you stuck in traffic. You wouldn't do that. Anyway, then you get to the city, and it's all like mass transit and shit, and then like so the day after, so Black Friday, and I would love to talk more about Black Friday, but this video is already getting long. I'm not gonna do that. Black Friday, I decided to go with my half of the family to the National Portrait Gallery, which is what you just saw, and so they tell me like, oh, security's gonna be tight, just so you know. Black Friday, National Portrait Gallery. Okay, cool. So I left my pocket knife at the place we were staying, and then I left my keys, which have a multi-tool on them, and my flashlight, and they're my keys. Like, I left all that just like sitting on my, on the table, and then I just walked out into the city, and I'm like, how do I do this? Like, how do I walk away from my pocket knife and my keys and my flashlight? I don't understand how I'm supposed to do that. And then I was like, okay, I don't need my keys. I don't mean, I'm not going to be driving my car, because my wife was taking the car. That was like, I don't need them. What would I use them for? But it was so hard to let go of like these things that like in my little country life are really necessary, But so I walked a few blocks. I paid $1 to get on a bus, but there were other people on the bus. Did you guys know that's how that works? Like, you have to sit with other people that you don't know, and they like talk and stuff. And I'm like, what the hell? What? Who are you people? What? No, I paid for this bus. They're going to take me to the National... And they didn't even take me all the way to the National Portrait Gallery. They like let me off at some bus stop, whatever that is. So, yeah, I had to like deal with that without my pocket knife and my flashlight. Do you understand how hard that was? So I go to the National Portrait Gallery. There's no security. I could have walked in there with an AR-15 and a flamethrower. No one was watching anybody. I did have my camera, and I was worried about that they wouldn't let me take my camera into the museum, right? But they were like, oh, we encourage photography. Then they didn't really have any photography exhibits, so that's kind of ironic. But the point being, I could have had a pocket knife that whole time. And then I would have been a whole man instead of the feeble kitten that I was out there in the cruel, cold world. It was very cold. And it was pretty cruel, actually. But anyway, so the National Portrait Gallery was fun. I would never do it again on Black Friday because it was insane. Like, you couldn't see the exhibits because of the people. And so about halfway through that, I had the stereotypical tourist in DC fear, which is, man, if I if I wanted to put on a suicide vest and blow up a bunch of people, this is where I would come. Yeah, and it was hot because there were so many, and I was motion sick from the bus. Doesn't this sound? I sound like a kid that's never been to the city before. I've been to cities. I like adventuring in cities, but I would never, ever, ever want to stay there for more than a few days. And I live in a city, right? That's like the city limits are right up there. I could throw a rock outside of the city, but I do live in the city limits. And then I go on a trip like this, and I'm like, I don't live in a city. This isn't a city. This is like barely a town compared to a place like DC. And DC isn't even a big city. So it really sort of hammered home the idea of like, we live in this divided time, and is it divided left, right, black, white, who knows? Well, there's a big like urban-rural divide that no one ever talks about because most people never cross it. They don't see the other side of it. And living here, what I see, a few weeks back, I was talking about the people that came down and jumped on the rocks in the river when it was like the water temp was like in the 40s, and they were like in city boots and leather jackets and stuff. And it's like, man, you don't understand what'll happen to you if you fall in. Those were obviously city people, and so I see them come here, and I'm like, city people, and I'm sure that like everybody in the city was like, you're not from here, are you? That kind of thing. That's a huge divide that we don't have the language to talk about. We can't talk, the way we can talk about racial divides or economic divides or whatever. Political divides. We don't really have a way of saying, well, you're an idiot because you're not from here. Like, you might be really smart back home, but here you're a babe in the woods or on the metro, whichever. And that's the thing, because, like Gribb's Rules of the Woods, right? Like in the top 10 is, if you hear a baby crying in the woods, do not investigate. There are no babies in the woods, right? But I don't think that applies to the metro. Like, if you hear a baby crying 4 cars down on the metro, you kind of have to go investigate. I wonder if there's an analogous caution about the city. Like, if you hear a bear grunting in this on the metro, don't investigate. There are no bears. But see, the thing is, there's zoos in cities, so there could actually be a bear on the metro. Even though I've done very little travel in my life, I do get the sense, from what I hear from other people who have traveled, from traveling that I've done, but also what I hear other people say, is that traveling is really an opportunity to get perspective on yourself, on your own life. And man, that's true. Like, I'm there visiting my brother. We were raised by the same father, and yet our lives are totally different. We have these crazy similarities between us, but to look at us from the outside, you would never know that we're related because our lives are so different. And and the same thing with my wife's family. It's like, you can see the family resemblance when you look at their faces. But other than that, man, it's like it's crazy, the divide between the lifestyles that we have. And part of that is money. Like, everyone that we went to visit is way more affluent than we are, and that's fine. And so I'm sure we could find people in DC that had like a more lower middle class life as opposed to. Okay, so the point is there's other stuff there, but I just don't see how people live there. Like, I don't see what the point of living there is. And I know that there was a time in my youth when I really wanted to go to New York, right? Because I'm a photographer, right? That's where you go. You go to New York and you shoot pictures and then you become famous. I don't know how it works, but that's the career track. And there was definitely a time in my life when I wanted to do that. But at no point did I ever actually want to live in New York enough to do it. And everybody I knew that went to New York came back and they were like, man, I'm glad to be back here. New York sucks. So maybe it's where you're born, where you grow up, and I don't know what your perspective is. Long story short, the whole trip makes me very glad to be home. But I will say, when I go visit people in the town where I grew up, which is like, there's like 1,500 people in the entire town and 2 stoplights or whatever. I have the same feeling. I'm like, how do you live here? How is it possible to sustain life here? And in some cases, it's not actually. And there again, I visited family that's a lot more well off than we are. Um, and then I go visit people in my hometown, and I'm like, oh, okay. So we're all just on this spectrum of like rural to urban and poor to rich, and you fit on your place in the spectrum, and that's where that's what you feel is normal. How do you get past that? How are you able to see the point of view of someone on the extreme ends of those spectrums? I don't know. But I do know that Old Limey Bastard in my Dagner Cobb tastes even sweeter here in the Gribley's Folly Smoky. Thanks for coming along. Keep the ends out for the ties that bind.